Hey guys, hey, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to Speak Freely, where we celebrate freedom of speech. My name is Shamika, and in today's topic of discussion, we're going to talk about toxic masculinity. I know what it is to be broke. Alright, toxic masculinity is a buzzword that really hit the scenes this time last year or 2 years ago, and it's still something that people use, toxic masculinity. But the thing is, I believe that it was brought up into the conversation sphere for a legit reason, and of course feminists just took it and ran with it and turned it into all masculinity is toxic, and that is such bullshit, and it's so harmful to men and young boys. There is something extremely beautiful and sexy about healthy, good masculinity. Just like it's something beautiful and sexy and sensual about healthy, good femininity. I'm not saying that's a monolith. I'm not saying like femininity looks like this and masculinity looks like that. I think it is a nuanced thing, but there's nothing wrong with being masculine, and there's nothing wrong with being feminine. And again, it looks different for different people. But I do think there is a conversation that needs to be had about toxic masculinity, because I do think it exists. And one of the main reasons why I think toxic masculinity is born is through fatherless homes. I've talked about this in other videos, but I'm going to go ahead and regurgitate it in this video. Okay, so you can see it in the animal kingdom where you have alpha males, and alpha males usually keep the beta males in place. You also see it in, like, the main one I like to use is the elephant kingdom. Okay, so there is a thing, I'll put the name on my screen. There's a thing that a lot of elephants go through when they're going through puberty, right? And especially male elephants, and they become really aggressive during this time, right? And the alpha male elephant, or the father elephant, is usually there to balance out that teen elephant. They're usually there to keep them in place, to keep them from developing toxic masculinity. A lot of times, if you see things in the animal kingdom, you also can make the same sense in the human world, right? You need a healthy male in the household to teach the teen male as they're growing up, or even just the young son as they're growing up, how to display or how to work with their masculinity, how to deal with it. And again, when they're teenagers and they're starting to get out of place, usually the father is there to keep them in check, to keep that from turning into something that it shouldn't turn into, which is toxic masculinity. And so if there is no father in a home, a lot of times there is no one to keep that in check for them, and there is no balance in the home. They're just femininity. And as much as I applaud a lot of single mothers who work damn hard to raise their children, you cannot teach a boy how to be a man. You just can't. You can give them all the ideas and the examples that you feel like a man should be, but you still cannot teach a boy how to be a man. And this is why I promote so much of family planning. Like, do not have kids out of wedlock. Do not have kids willy-nilly. Do not have kids with a guy that you felt down for like 3 months, okay? And I'm not supporting abortion either. I'm just saying, like, just be smart, all right? Play smart. And it's the same thing with men. Like, don't lay down with a woman that you don't want to have kids with. Wrap it up. Use protection. There's so many ways to keep yourself from getting pregnant. No one should just be popping out children. My dad had a what do you call it when you snip? My dad snipped it. Okay, and he did that because he didn't want to be another statistic. He didn't want to be another black man getting a bunch of girls pregnant and not knowing how to take care of all these kids, right? So he was accountable for himself. He took responsibility for themselves. And I don't know why people think telling black people or anybody to take responsibility for yourself and be accountable for your own actions is somehow racist or belittling, but it's not. Anyway, I'm going off on a rant. But that's the main reason why I think toxic masculinity is birth. Because there is an absence of a father, or there is an absence of a healthy father. And the thing is, when a young man grows up without a father, and he's never giving a good example of what a healthy man looks like or healthy masculinity looks like, he's never giving a mentor or someone to look up to, then even when he decides to become a father, it may be even hard for him to show his son or his daughter what a healthy man looks like, because he didn't have any examples for himself. I am not saying it's not possible whatsoever. I'm just saying that's something that can happen. So it's not even just a case of having a father in a home. It's the case of having a healthy father in a home and also a healthy mother. And so it just continues this cycle on and on and on and on. So when people first start talking about toxic masculinity, I was like, okay, this is a conversation that we should be having. But then, of course, feminists took it over and it became all masculinity is bad, and that's bullshit. There needs to always be balance. There needs to be always balance. And that's why I'm not for this idea that women need to take over. It's our turn. We need to take over the government, blah, blah, blah. Because there needs to be a balance. There needs to be a balance of feminine energy and masculine energy, okay? And when you just have one and not the other, shit just goes out of whack. Alright? So young men who doesn't have a really good example of healthy masculinity usually will get their examples from media. They'll get their examples from movies, music videos, and then also just their peers. But then you have teenage boys teaching teenage boys how to be men. And that doesn't necessarily work all the time either. I do believe in socializing, and you need your peers and your friends and stuff like that to grow up to be able to socialize in a healthy way. But that is not where you should be learning your masculinity, is from TV, movies, music videos, and your friends who it's like the blind leading the blind, basically. But if a young man grows up with that type of examples, with no healthy male examples, but their peers and music videos and blah blah blah, then a lot of times they think their masculinity is based in their sexuality. And so then they go out and be like, well, in order for me to show you I'm a man, that means me fucking as many bitches as I can, which usually just turns out to be more pregnant women, and the fathers not being able to take care of them, and just unwed mothers and children out of wedlock, because they're going out having kids and to prove their masculinity, not using protection. And then also they feel like masculinity is a form of aggression. That means fighting, that means being hard, that means not being conscious of your own emotions or your own feelings. Not that I'm saying I like guys who are like super sensitive or anything like that, but just from a psychological and a logic standpoint, knowing why you're doing what you're doing, they never develop that. So they only learn how to express themselves through aggression, through anger, fuck that bitch, that hoe, da da da, all these things, and getting into fights. So that's what develops if there is no healthy form of masculinity around to help that child, that young man rear up in a healthy way. So I do think there is a conversation to be had about toxic masculinity, but we need to stop saying that all masculinity is bad or toxic, because it's not true. The fact of the matter is, masculinity and femininity can look different for different people, but there is a difference between men and women. Men being a little bit more gruntier and scratching themselves and watching sports and drinking beers and whatever, that's typical. I'm not generalizing. I'm not saying that all men need to do that, but this idea that that should be condemned, they shouldn't do those things. It's like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with men having their men caves and playing sports and wanting to have this competitive feeling and all those things. There's nothing wrong with that. We should allow them to do those things because it's healthy for them. It's healthy for them to express themselves in that way. And the same thing with femininity. It's healthy for a woman to want to feel soft and sensual and vulnerable and all those things, because it's just the way we are. And I'm not saying everybody, I'm generalizing here. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. This is a short little video. I just wanted to talk about that. I do think there's a conversation to be had about toxic masculinity, but I don't think feminists are actually talking about it in the correct and the right way. The way they're talking about it is unhealthy, and it's not actually going to help anybody. You're just condemning people basically for being who they are and being who they were born to be. But I do believe there is a conversation to be had about it, and there's something we can do to stop it, and that is family planning, stop having kids out of wedlock, and men staying there for their children. And if you are a man or a woman that is coming from brokenness, do the work to make sure that you're whole before you have children. Therapy, counseling, education, whatever it is, fucking a year around the world just to, liberate yourself, something, so you're not passing that down to your children. Again, I don't believe what feminists believe. I don't think all masculinity is toxic. I think it's actually something very beautiful about good, healthy masculinity. The same thing for femininity. But I do think there's a conversation to be had about it. So anyway, that's the end of my video. Tell me what you think. Do you believe even in the concept of toxic masculinity at all? Do you think there is a conversation to be had about it, or whatever? If you do believe in toxic masculinity, why do you believe it, and where does it come from, and how do we fix it, and how do we help it? And do you think all masculinity is just toxic and we should just get rid of all men? something like some bullshit like that. And if you do, just tell me why, because I can be wrong. I'm open to discussion, I'm open to debate, and I'm open to being wrong. Anyway, if you have any comments whatsoever, please leave it in the comment section below. If you like this video, please like it and share it to the moon and beyond, or just Facebook and Twitter would be sufficient. And if you want to continue having these conversations with moi, please subscribe, and if you subscribe, hit that bell so you get the notifications when I do upload. Thank you, and peace.
My wings are made of plastic. My wings are made